Good morning for me here, Steve. And what is it? Good afternoon for you over there?
It is good. Good late afternoon. Good early. Yeah, late afternoon.
Late afternoon. Excellent. Well, Steve, look, thanks very much for joining us here on the download. This is a different way for us to do the download. Normally we're on a couch and now we're doing it over a video and recording this one. So this will be quite an interesting one for all of our viewers. But Steve, mate, I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. You've certainly inspired us within our organization. We've recently implemented the LEAP philosophy, which has been pulled together by yourself. So look, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Ronnie. I've been looking forward to this. I don't get out to Australia as often as I'd like to, so this is the next best thing. I guess it's a very far second, but it is the next best thing. So I'm in the, loosely put, I'm in the leadership development field, which I've been doing in some form or another for over 25 years. So my passion is about helping people to understand what real leadership is, what it means to them, and what it means to the people around them. So the application of leadership is something that happens on an individual level and a corporate level, a cultural level. So my work is about developing not just individual leaders, but cultures of leadership. I've written 3 books in the process: The Radical Leap, The Radical Edge, and Greater Than Yourself. I've had some phenomenal mentors. And over the last 2.5 decades or so, it's not an exaggeration to say that I've worked with just about every kind of company and just about every kind of industry that you can think of. I'm certainly not an expert in any of them, but my expertise is really in about, it really falls into that category that all companies, at least for now, have in common, and that is that they're all populated by human beings. So it's about my work is about bringing the best. It sounds cliche to say it, but it's really true. It's about bringing the best out of ourselves and the people around us in a business context for the benefit of our customers and clients. And it sounds like a tall order, but only because it is. But it's really about personal joy and meaning, success and prosperity in our work, and changing the world for the better, all at the same time.
And that's sort of founded on the concept of LEAP, right? Love, energy, audacity, proof. Tell us a little bit more about the Radical Leap.
Yeah, so the Radical Leap is it's the name of my first book, which came out in its original edition in 2004. And as you said, it presents a framework: love, energy, audacity, and proof. The framework for what I like to refer to as extreme leadership. Because leadership really is extreme. If we're really doing it, it's an extreme act. It's not about the position. It's not about the title we give ourselves. It's not about what it says on our business card. Leadership is an extreme act. We put ourselves at risk to accomplish something extraordinary, change things for the better in the process. So love, energy, audacity, and proof is the thing that I've discovered, and I say discovered like I discovered some new element, but it's something that I've seen over and over again as being the framework, the building blocks, the foundation for really extraordinary, otherwise known as extreme leaders. So they cultivate love, they generate energy, they inspire audacity, they provide proof. And that's the conclusion that I came to, certainly not in a vacuum. It's a conclusion I came to from working with all these aforementioned businesses and the people that lead them and the people that work in them. And, you can learn as much from really terrible leaders as you can from great ones.
Absolutely.
You just got to know when to emulate and when to do the opposite.
Yeah, well, look, you're absolutely right. When we started our business here at Insentra, we were talking about building the culture that we built, and that we're constantly working on building, right? Because I don't think you can ever have built a culture. It's an evolving, developing thing that just continues and morphs and grows. One of the things we did was we sort of spoke, well, what type of business do we want to be? And when we were doing so, we sort of said, what sort of business do we want to be? And we started looking at the things that we didn't want to be. So we said all the things that our managers had done that we hated, we weren't going to implement. And all the things that they did that we loved, we were going to implement. And everything in between, we'd kind of just wing it. and go with, well, would we like that or wouldn't we like it? So you're absolutely right. You learn so much from the people that don't do a great job of it, as much as you can do. In fact, sometimes more than you do from the people who do.
Yeah. And you bring up a really important point, Ronnie. It's, we make this idea of culture kind of mysterious. How do you build a culture? How do you create a culture? The fact of the matter is you already are. So my team and I just put out a white paper on 7 steps to improving company culture, and I have to admit it's pretty damn good. But one of the things that I like about it is the starting proposition is there are essentially 2 ways to change a culture. One is to do something, and the other is to do nothing.
Yeah.
Because a culture, as you said, is a living, breathing thing. It's going to change because the people change. Either they literally change, you get new people, or the people themselves change and grow. The market changes, the world changes, the economy changes, and as things change, the culture changes too. The question is it changing in a way that serves you? Mm-hmm. And I think that we, as entrepreneurs, as business people, we ignore culture at our own peril, because it's not just going to, if we get lucky, it'll just take care of itself. It's just, the same is true for individual leaders. I mean, some people are just good at it, right? We're unconsciously competent. There are people that we just do great. We just, we inspire people. We get great things done. We don't really know how we do it. It just happens. The same is true for cultures. So we have to be very cognizant of and conscious about what kind of culture we want to create. And that culture is the perfect culture for us is going to be the one that best serves our objectives as an organization and the people in it.
No, I agree. And this is another interesting thing that we talk about, right, is, we were 8th last year in Australia's Great Places to Work. We'll find out on August the 30th this year where we ended up this year.
Nice.
I talk to everyone in the company when I pull everyone together for our monthly meeting. And I speak to them about the fact that, you like the culture we have. In fact, you love the culture we have. That's evident in day-to-day behaviors. It's evident in the feedback we get. But what I also say to them is, culture starts at the top and it percolates from the bottom and it permeates from within, right? So I always say to them, if you don't like what's happening in the culture, hold up a mirror, because ultimately you're allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
We'll create a framework for you, but you as part of the organization allow that to happen. And I think what it is as well is in that framework, and this is why I love the Radical Leap and why we've implemented the Radical Leap within our business, is that whole concept of starting from the position of love, right? And one of your lines that I quote regularly, do what you love in the company of people who love what you do. It's just so powerful in what it says. And I think that's something that's really important when you're building a culture. But I guess the question I've got for you, though, is, what do you think prevents people from extreme leadership, from doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's certainly, no one answer to it. But let me give you a couple of the classics. One, I think, is just lack of awareness. There are some people that they get very comfortable with where they are and how they do things, and it works for them. They get results, and there's really no impetus, there's no incentive to try to do it better because it just hasn't occurred to them. I'm pretty damn good at what I do. No need to change. Just cruising along. So that's one reason. The other, I think, is fear. That's a pretty universal one. I don't, a lot of us, I know I'm overgeneralizing, but, a lot of people, the truism is that people don't like change. Although one of my mentors, Terry Pierce, was fond of saying people don't like change, but they love progress, right? So, and of course, progress is change. So progress is change with a purpose. So I might be afraid to change how I do things because I've become comfortable. And even though I see that there's a better way, it scares me to think about taking a different approach, having a different attitude towards people, taking more risks. I mean, there are any number of things to be scared of. Most of us human beings are, we don't find any shortage of things to be scared of. So it could be fear. And there's the other one too is no desire. No desire. Maybe I'm not scared of it. Maybe I don't. Maybe I think I, quote unquote, should do it. I don't want to.
So let's say though that people are going to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in an entrepreneurial sense, a lot of people do want to aspire to be fantastic leaders or extreme leaders.
Yes.
And so let's assume that there's no fear and there is no concern about change, and they are trying to be extreme leaders. What then do you think prevents people from being extreme leaders?
Well, it's like anything else, it's a learning process. And I think what's deceptive about it, I mean, if you look at that LEAP framework, love, energy, audacity, and proof, it's very evocative. It's very intuitive, I think, for a lot of people. For the people that resonate with it, they go, yeah, that's right. I get that. They might have some questions as to some of the subtleties around it, the nuances around it. But that's a little bit deceptive because it's really challenging to do every day. As one of your colleagues, Jody Elkins, said to me once, if you want to do this stuff, you got to be willing to put your ego at the door because this is hard work. It's hard work. So even though it resonates, it sounds nice, people get this kind of feeling about, if you use the word love and everybody's happy all the time and we're always smiling and everything's great. That's, love is pretty messy and it can be very, very challenging. It should be very challenging, one could argue. So I think there's this desire that most of us have, myself included, that, we would rather that things be easy. So we try it, and maybe it doesn't, we try something new. We have a different kind of a conversation with somebody. We try to put some new idea into practice. It doesn't work out in the way that we thought it would. It feels frustrating, so we go, screw it. I tried it, didn't work. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. We need to allow ourselves to understand that this is all about trial and error, which means that we have to be willing to fall on our face. We have to be willing to screw it up. And I think, a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a little bit of a paradox because entrepreneurs, we're risk takers, but at the same time, we don't like to fail.
Yeah.
Right. And we all know that there's no such thing as risk without failure. I mean, risk by definition means there's potential failure. Right. So I think we get in our own way. We want to be extreme leaders, and then the challenge of putting that into practice is very revealing. We're holding a mirror up to ourselves to see what we're made of.
And look, I think there's something that just occurred to me as you were saying that, and you kind of drew that parallel, which is, as an entrepreneur, you do try and you fail and you try again and you try again and you try again. I mean, no fantastic company has had everything work brilliantly for them from day zero. There's always some type of challenge. There's always something that's going to come in. But because that's the health and success of your business and what your vision is and your goals that you're trying to achieve, you do get up and keep going. But I think, you might be onto something there specifically around leadership, where in a leadership capacity, it's like, well, that didn't work, but I'm not going to go do something about that. However, in my mind, those two are inextricably linked. If you don't get that right at a leadership level, you can have the most fantastic business idea in the world and you can have the most fantastic product in the world, but you will never be as successful as what you would be if you could get to that point of extreme leadership.
Yeah, that's right. And I would say, the other thing that particularly early stage entrepreneurs classically don't pay attention to is the culture that they're building, like we were talking about earlier, right? Because we're passionate about the product, the service, the money, the impact, and those are all really important things. I'm not downplaying those, but very few entrepreneurs that I encounter, and I encounter many of them, start out a company by saying, what kind of culture do we want to create from the very beginning?
Absolutely.
And why don't we do it? Because it's a lot of work. it's challenging, and we already have a lot of work to do. And we're not used to failing on that sort of a level. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are used to failing in terms of projects and trying something that doesn't work and getting funding and running out of funding and having to get more funding and, the quote unquote usual kind of entrepreneurial stuff. But when I'm trying to do something really personal, like become a better leader, connect with people, be more inspiring, have a higher sense of purpose, get people to do really great things together, that feels more personal. We don't like to fail in those things because we take it, by definition, we take it personally.
Absolutely. Look, I think one of the interesting things that I say, right, is that, people are the heart of the business, but the culture is indeed its very soul.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's that soul that is always going to live on regardless of what happens with the people.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that'd be an interesting.
Go ahead.
It's a cool image. It'd be an interesting philosophical debate to have sometime.
Yeah, we should talk more about it.
Yeah, yeah, but it's there. But I think what we could agree on for sure is that they're equally important and they're very intimately connected.
Absolutely.
And in a smaller company, yes, it's true that everybody needs to take responsibility for the culture. And in a smaller company, it really does come from the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And part of the culture needs to be that if the positional leader or leaders are saying one thing about the kind of culture that we should have here, but acting in a way that's contrary to that, then you would hope that the ideal is to have a self-correcting culture where the trust level is high enough that they can get, if somebody's doing that, they can get called on it.
Yeah.
By their
that's the audacity, isn't it?
People that work for them.
That's the audacity.
That's the audacity. And you know what? It's also the love. It's also the love, right? Because if I love this place, if I love what we're trying to do, if I love our product, service, offering, future, whatever, if I love that, I'm not going to be very tolerant of people that are acting in a way that's going to hamper that, right? So the more I love this place, the more, let me put it this way. What I've seen over and over again is cultures that really are rooted in love tend to have a higher level of debate. They tend to have more, they're more fiery. People argue. People are very, brutally honest, but not because they're trying to tear each other down, but because they're trying to build the place up. So the standards actually go up when the love gets deep.
So let's just explore that for a moment, right? Like I talk about here at Insentra, we're not an adult daycare center, right? I'm not trained in running daycare centers. So I don't want to be an adult daycare center, and I want to have that emotional side of the business. I want people to be able to, have the confidence and have the ability and take accountability and do what it is they say they're going to do. That how do you balance that emotional side of the business without sort of raising a bunch of babies?
Well, I don't see those things as I don't think it's either or. I mean, I think if you're really focusing on the love side of the business, there's no room for babies. I mean, it's not a as one of the old classics. What is it? It's not a place for little boys in short pants. It's adult level work, right? I think the stereotype is, well, we want everybody to love each other. That's the stereotype. And if we love each other, then we just do everything to make everybody happy all the time. And if you need something more from me, I'll do whatever I can to provide that for you, even when it's completely irresponsible of you to ask me for it. That's not what this is. This is real, in the heart, mature kind of love of cause and purpose as well as people, right? So I don't have any tolerance for that sort of thing either. I mean, I really don't. And there is such a thing as tough love. And sometimes there are people that find their way into your organization that take advantage of the empowerment and freedom that goes along with an organization of adults. And you give them a chance, you give them some feedback, and if they can't rise to the situation that we have here, then see you later.
Yeah.
I got no problem with that. I could love you. I could really sincerely, deeply love you and fire you at the same time. Because if I really love you and it's not working here, why would I want you to stay? Because there's a place out there that's better for you. So I'll love you from a distance. Thank you very much.
And Steve, I would say to you quite confidently that that's exactly how I look at things.
Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting in terms of communicating it. And I think that the way you've communicated it there that I'm going to take away from this is the tough love concept, right? But it's also about that, and people having the confidence and the trust in you. And I call it, if your time is done on the train here, because we refer to Insentra as a train, as I know you're aware. And if your time is done on the train here at Insentra, well, hey, guess what? I'm happy to help you find another train.
That's right.
Because that's not just going to work for me, but it's also going to work for you. If you're not happy here, I actually don't want you here. Right?
Exactly.
I don't want you here from a place of good, not from a place of, bugger you, get out of here. I just don't want you here because I don't think it's right for either of us.
Right. And also you have a, as I would argue we all do, right? But let's just talk about you for a second, Ronnie. You have a fiduciary and moral responsibility to the health of the company, right? So if there's an individual that's really compromising that, it's your responsibility to say farewell, right? And they're very, compassionate, humane, loving ways to do that. The only thing that I get concerned about is, sometimes people get so impatient that they jump to the conclusion that you're on the wrong train too quickly. And, I'm all for giving people a chance, which means, so the responsibility falls back on us as leaders is that we have to be really clear about what the expectations are and not assume that it's going to be obvious to everybody, right? So that's why, stated values are important, and then extrapolating from those values, the behaviors that we expect from each other around here. So, we have to be really overt about the expectations that we have of each other. So then when somebody's not living up to those expectations, it's not a shock to them. It's like, well, I never heard that we're, not supposed to do that, or that should never be the case. It should be really clear, not only what we're all about, but what our, behavioral expectations are of each other.
Yeah, and look, I think the struggle that comes with that is you can get to that point with the individual and you can get to that point with people around. Then the whole interpersonal side comes into play, right? And somebody who hasn't been necessarily performing or isn't necessarily fitting in, as it were, or isn't working in accordance with the company values, etc. The interpersonal relationships that other people have with those individuals make them go, why would they have done that to that person? And, getting to a point where generically, and I think it's easier in a smaller business, but much harder in a larger business, to get to that point where people actually trust in the leadership, that the leadership's making the right decision for the individual that they're deciding it for, and for the business, and therefore ultimately for the other individuals in the business that you're impacting as a result. All too much in the same way as making the right hiring decision. People don't sit there and say, oh my God, you made the right hiring decision, and have all of that same emotion attached to it for bringing the right people in. But there's a lot of emotion attached to letting the wrong people, or the people who were the right people who are no longer the right people now.
Or the people who appeared to be the right people and turned out to be somebody else once you hired them.
Absolutely, right? We've all had those scenarios.
Yeah, we've all had those.
What do you think, we're in IT here at Insentra, right? And we're in a massive transformation in the IT industry. Globally, we're seeing the transformation of IT and the move towards a digital workplace, et cetera, all becoming part of it. What do you think the function of leadership is within that new paradigm now, with the introduction of AI and the introduction of a whole stack of other things that are coming into play? What do you think the future of extreme leadership looks like?
I think, it's really interesting. The trend since I started doing this work 25 years ago has been really consistent. And if you think about the changes in technology over the last 10 years, let alone the last 25, it's just massive, right? But there's been this consistent trend through all that changing technology, and that is the place for meaning and purpose and joy and fulfillment at work. So, 30 years ago, this wasn't even a conversation, or it was a very limited conversation, because that's the stuff that you did at home. Work was about getting your work, getting shit done and making money. Well, that's still true. But now more than ever, we want, and this is not something that's just the sole domain of millennials. We all want higher meaning and purpose at work. We want it. We want to feel like we're making a difference. We want to feel like we're being authentic. Or to put it another way, we want to be authentic, and we want to have an impact. Yes, we want to make money. Yes, and all that, but we want to have that higher level of engagement from every aspect of our being, as it were. So this conversation has become more and more mainstream. That's been the trend, and I think as we project that out into the future, technology. Obviously, the change in technology is I don't claim to be an expert in that. The limits of my, futuristic, futurist capabilities are, man, there's going to be a lot of new shit. It's going to be amazing. That's about it. That's all I know. But I do know that right. I'll never say that I know, but I predict that the future of leadership is going to be more and more personal. More and more personal. This is not a fad. It's not a passing thing. It's not, I'm just close my eyes and hold my breath for a little while and then all this touchy-feely crap will disappear. More and more we're seeing that there's a direct correlation between things like engagement and joy and love at work tied directly to results in the bottom line. So it's no longer an argument, for example, that companies that show higher levels of employee engagement tend to be more successful. We don't argue that point anymore. There's just too much evidence to know that it's true. So I think we're going to see. We're going to see a deepening of that, and that's why, this discussion of love in the workplace. That love is a competitive advantage in a business, this idea that love is just damn good business, we are at the very beginning of that conversation. I've had people tell me almost every day, it seems, I hear somebody say to me something like, you're the only person that I know of that writes about this stuff, that talks about this stuff. I've never heard anybody use love in business before. I hear that every day. And the fact is, it's just not true. There are quite a few of us out there who are saying similar things and using that language and doing the research on it. But it's still so contrary to the way we've been trained. Absolutely. That it's a very new conversation. So I think, maybe I'm a little bit biased when I say this, but I think the trend of towards love as a hardcore competitive business practice, we're going to see more and more of that in the future.
Okay, well, having implemented that, the LEAP philosophy, but even prior to that, right, without necessarily having put such a great framework around it as LEAP, we've been doing a lot of those types of behaviours, and perhaps, actually very consciously. Since we started the business. And there's one consistent piece of feedback that I get, which is when we're recruiting people, and I will meet every single person that we bring into this business, because it's really important to me that they understand from me at the top of the organization exactly what it is I'm looking for, the vision of our business, et cetera, et cetera. And when I go through the culture and I explain what we're trying to build as an organization, I consistently get, it's too good to be true. It can't be that way. And then when people come and join the business, there is a period of time, and that period of time varies sometimes from a few weeks to, even in some cases, 6 months, where people are sitting back watching and just watching to see if this is really true and if it's really possible and if this is truly how the organization behaves. So, when you keep hearing, oh, Steve, you're one of the only people or the only people that speaks about love, you may not be the only person, but there's so few. And there's so few who truly passionately lead from the heart and who passionately want to create that environment where love is at the core of it, that it's a long journey, I think, ahead of us to get everybody, or to get, the masses behind the concept of, hey,
Yeah,
it's the way it should be.
yeah, exactly. So let me say a couple things about that. So first of all, I'm really excited about this, and I might have shared this with you before, Ronnie, but for your listeners, I think it's really important for them to hear this. This idea of love as a business practice, and specifically, the LEAP framework, love, energy, audacity, and proof, applied on a cultural level, we're seeing some pretty amazing case studies. So you guys are number 8 best place to work in Australia. In Seattle, Washington, there's a company called OAC Services. They've been strategically applying this LEAP framework to their culture. It's a 65-year-old company. They're a consulting, architectural construction consulting company. They were just last year, they made number 14 best place to work in the state of Washington. And think about who's in the state of Washington.
Yeah.
Right? And in their category, in their size category. And then this year, they were number 2.
Fantastic. And that's against a lot of the tech companies, right?
Yeah. So these guys are engineers, and I just love that because it flies in the face of the stereotype. And they will tell you it's because of this very conscious strategic application of LEAP. They want to create a culture that people love working in. Sean Mahoney was the senior principal when he gave his acceptance speech at the awards dinner where they got number 2. I was unbelievably gratified to hear him say it. He opened his speech with, do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. That's their thing. That's what they do. So then in Jacksonville, Florida, there's a company called Trailer Bridge, very different industry, shipping and logistics company. We're just voted number 1 best place to work in Jacksonville. Love, energy, audacity, and proof is a major part of their culture. So it is possible. It can be the norm. And you're right, it's not. So here's the way that I like to think about my work and your work and all of our work by extension, people that feel as passionately about this as you and I do. Nowadays, and it gets back to what you were saying about when people first join the company, they're going, is this real? Is this, they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Here's why. When you're talking to a friend that you haven't seen for a while, and you're just catching up, and your friend starts telling you about this place that they work, about this idiot boss that they work for, and these stupid people that they work with, and the company's all screwed up, and their customers are idiots, and they're just going on and on like that. And you listen to that person, you listen to your friend, and typically you feel compassion, and you say, well, you feel like you want to encourage them maybe to find new work or to keep a stiff upper lip or whatever. What we typically don't do, we don't respond like this. What? You hate your job? Are you kidding? That's not how we respond, right? We never respond with surprise because that's what we expect people to say about their work. On the other hand, if you're talking to somebody that says, "Oh man, I can't wait till Monday," yeah. Right? The people at work are some of my best friends. I can't wait. It's hard for me to tear myself away from the office at the end of the day. That's when we react with surprise. Like, are you kidding? Are you sick?
That happened to me just this week.
Are you people crazy? So that's the way I like to think about my work. I'll know that we've made a difference when the response reverses, right? When somebody talks about how much they love their work, our natural response will be, well, yeah, of course you do.
Of course you do.
Of course you do. Because you'd spend so much of your life there. So why why wouldn't you? We obviously have a long way to go until that's the norm.
No, but it's a great journey to be on, and I'm enjoying it. And clearly, you can see your passion for it. You're obviously enjoying it too. So, Steve, tell me, outside of the three, fantastic books that you've written, and I know I've read all three of them, and each one of them has some pearls of wisdom in them. Outside of those, what book would you recommend? If you could recommend one book to business leaders who are watching this, what's the one text that you would recommend that people read right now?
A book called The Leadership Challenge by Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner. That's Kouzes and Barry Posner, Posner. I think it just came out in its 5th edition or something. I mean, it's a cliche to call anything other than the Bible, but it's the Bible of the leadership research.
Tell me why.
My disclaimer on that is that if it is a disclaimer, that Jim Kouzes is probably my most significant mentor. We worked together at the Tom Peters Company back in the day. He's the one who hired me there. And then we both served, he was the president of the company. I was vice president of the company. He's had a huge impact and influence on my thinking and my practice as a leader. And the Leadership Challenge is research-based. They're constantly updating it. And it's a good read, a lot of case studies. I'd in fact, it's not just that I highly recommend it. It really is required reading for anybody who's serious about leadership.
Fantastic. What a great recommendation. All right. So now on a totally different angle. So you've traveled a lot. You've visited many countries around the world with your work that you do. And indeed you live in America. So there's a possibility it could be local there. Tell me the craziest food you've ever eaten, Steve.
Craziest food. I think it would have to be the stir-fried hornets that I had in Thailand.
Hornets?
Hornets, yeah. Maybe little baby larva. Hornet larva.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
A few of the adults mixed in just for crunch.
And how did you go paletting those?
It wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. Yeah.
Tasted like chicken, like all those things do?
No, it didn't taste like chicken. It didn't taste like chicken. I think that's a myth. I think it tasted like, I'm not sure what it tasted like. It definitely didn't taste like chicken, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. Stir fried, it's oil and spices and all that. That's pretty much all you taste. But I was really proud of myself for having eaten it. I was with a friend of mine, and we were there with some Thai people, right? So they were ordering for us. And the waitress brought out this big plate and put it on the table and said, stir-fried hornets. I said, okay, I'll give it a try. My friend looked at me and he said, I can't believe you're eating that. I said, tastes like chicken. But actually at that same meal, and this was in a restaurant, like it wasn't a tourist restaurant. It was out like in the jungle somewhere that these locals took us to. And I also had wild boar, which was actually hunted in that jungle that we were sitting in there.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably the most memorable meal. But here in Southern California, In-N-Out Burger will do in a pinch.
Hey, don't give In-N-Out Burger a hard time. We love In-N-Out Burger at Insentra. It's like it's a ritual visit when we're in Southern California. Absolutely. It is for me too, unfortunately. Particularly animal style.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I'm impressed.
Yeah, told you. It's definitely, we're fans of it here. So, Steve, look, you've been very, very, very good at giving us the time that you have today. I've got one last question for you.
Yeah.
If there were 3 actionable steps that any leader could take when they've been, sitting here and listening to this, any 3 actionable steps that a leader could implement that would make a profound impact, what would those 3 be from your perspective?
You mean aside from coming to San Diego for my various events, or hiring me to come in as a speaker, or hiring me as a personal coach? Aside from those,
Steve, because I know you well enough and I know how non-self-serving you are, I know how tongue-in-cheek that was. Tell me.
Yeah, so there's a few things. First of all, I think it's starting with asking yourself a really simple and very important question, or some variation on this theme. why do I love this business, and how do I show it? Or why do I love my team, and how do I show it? Why do I love my clients? How do I show it? Why do I love this work, generically speaking, and how do I show it? So what I'm asking you to do is to literally, and by the way, literally is a word I use literally, literally sit down and ask yourself that question, especially when the answer is not forthcoming, right? Because we've all had those days where it's not an easy question to answer. The question doesn't even come out, why do I love this work? It's more like, why the hell did I sign up for this, right? So the more difficult it is to answer that question, the more important it is to answer that question. Why do I love this? How do I show it? That's going to lead to all kinds of behaviors they're going to be a lot more powerful because you thought of them versus my prescribing them to you, okay? Number two, I would say make sure that you know the people that you work with as people. So a good place to start with this is just to do what I like to call a story inventory. So think about the people that you work with and just make a little list, either a literal list or a mental list of all the stories that you know about them. Stories that you know about their accomplishments, their family, their adventures, and just let that be a litmus test to see how well you know them. Because sometimes, you think you know somebody really well, and then you realize, I don't know a damn thing about them. Yeah. I couldn't tell you what their favorite ice cream is. I couldn't tell you what their favorite TV show. I couldn't tell you if they have kids or not, right? So that number two, do a story inventory as a way to help you get to know people better. And then if you don't know the stories, go find out. Spend some time. Go get a cup of coffee and sit down and just have a chat and get to know them. And then I'll kind of along those same lines, but on a very different level. This is really at the heart of what I talk about in my book called Greater Than Yourself. Find somebody, at least one person, ideally more, that you can take on with you in the role of being a significant mentor. And what I mean by that is that your job is to invest yourself in that person or in those people. Invest yourself in such a significant way as to make them greater than yourself. In other words, are there people that you can invest yourself in so that by the time you're quote unquote done working with them, they're going to be more successful at this, whatever this is, than you are. And then ask them to do the same for somebody else. That's a very significant way to change the culture one person at a time, to really build a culture of not just of collaboration, but a real culture of love, where we're investing in each other's success versus seeing success as a zero-sum game where my success is somehow predicated on your failure. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's changing the mindset that says my success is going to be predicated on your even greater success.
Yeah, and I think when you do that, the sense of pride that you get in watching that and seeing where someone has gone, and then in turn, I mean, when you do mentoring, you always get things in return. But when you watch someone who then becomes better than you, it's interesting to watch that reverse, and you start to learn so much more from them, and then you can go and apply that to the next person, and so too will it just increase, right? So I think that is a fantastic thing to be suggesting to people, that, to leaders, that they do, and in fact not just leaders but to anybody.
Absolutely.
I think these three things that you've given in terms of find out why you love, and find out how you love, and find out what that's about, creating that story inventory, and then giving that to other people and helping other people become greater than yourself. Three fantastic pieces of advice. Steve Farber, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me here today. I always enjoy talking with you. I always pick up tidbits myself when I talk to you. You definitely make me laugh too, which is really always important. So Steve, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
That was just superb. Thank you.